So I get this question from time to time on how did we establish Slidebean in the US as a US company? For 21-year-old me, the prospect of owning a legal entity in another country might as well been as foreign as Klingon. The truth is, sadly, information about all of this is kind of scattered all over the web, and you have no choice but to read a lot or learn by messing up. And in case you didn't know, I'm Costa Rican, so we started Slidebean in San José, the Costa Rican San Jose, but Slidebean was established as a US company from the get-go. So if you want to raise venture capital, or maybe you just want to sell internationally, a US company, a US entity is probably the way to go in most parts of the world. In this video, we're going to go over the good, the bad, and the ugly of running a US company, and whether it's right for you. Okay, so should you be a US company? Now, becoming familiar with a jurisdiction that is not your own will be a mess any way you slice it, or in any country in the world. Running a company that operates across multiple countries will have extra costs, and there's no way around it. So the first step is, I think, understanding if this is an actual need for your business. Do you need a US entity, and when do you need it? So the first and most obvious reason is venture capital. If you intend to raise venture capital, chances are your investors are gonna require a US entity, especially if you're in the Western side of the world. But before checking that field, take a moment to analyze if you should try to raise money from US investors. Remember, investors are usually putting money in or around their backyard. So if you're based in Argentina with no plans to move to the US anytime soon, raising from US investors is a stretch. It's just too far, physically too far. US investors also invest in markets that they understand well. That means that if your product or your service are not going to target US customers anytime soon, raising capital there is not the first step for the business. Now, another reason to establish a US entity is access to platforms. For example, Stripe or Square are by far some of the best, some of the most established, most robust credit card processors out there, and they are of course not available in every country. Even Brex or maybe staff management platforms like remote.com are designed for US companies and often require a US entity to serve their customers. So in our case, Stripe was really the first absolute must. We needed a solid system to log customers, to log subscriptions, and Stripe is pretty much a market standard these days. Now, it doesn't only translate to the tools that they might give your team, but also credibility for your customers. Customers already trust Stripe. They trust it with their credit cards, but might be more reluctant to try another system. Also, Stripe, for example, will bill your customer's card from the US, and most credit cards will support that without any flags or issues. But if you suddenly are paying for a service and your bank sees a charge coming from a Costa Rican credit card processor, that's bound to raise bank flags or just to get the transaction rejected. So in our case, we pretty much ticked all these marks. We were targeting US customers, we were targeting US investors, and we needed friendly international payments. So let's go to requirements now. Contrary to popular belief, there are very few requirements to establish a US company. You don't need to be a US citizen, and you don't need to be a US resident. As a matter of fact, you don't even need to set foot in the US to do so. So technically you wouldn't need a visa either. I would probably advise against doing this if you can't even enter the country, but honestly, nothing legally stops you from doing it. Now, depending on the state where you're filing, you're gonna need a local address in that state, which will be your business's official address. So do you need a friend or an address in Delaware to be able to catch your mail? Of course not. This is America. Start of land. So somebody already came up with a solution for this. A bunch of companies, as a matter of fact, offer this as a service, but I'll get to those in a sec. Because the last requirement that you have is deciding the type and the location of the entity that you want to establish. Now, if you're a startup, you probably want to go with a Delaware C Corp, which is by far the most standard, the most well-known legal entity to VC investors. So much so that it's often a deal breaker if you're not a Delaware C Corp, because converting is a possibility, converting from another type of entity, but it's expensive, takes a long time, so you want to get this right from the get-go. Investors usually don't like LLCs or C Corps that are outside of Delaware. I found this really good article about it. I'm going to link it in the description. So now let's move into the steps. There's an easy way and a hard way to incorporate. So when we first started Slidebean, we knew almost nothing about incorporation or tax law, bank accounts. We had to rely on our friends, our mentors, our support network. We had DreamIt and 500 startups to help us figure all of this stuff out. But it's 2021 and there are better ways to navigate this now. So let's start with the steps. You're gonna need an agent to help you register. There are a bunch of those available online, and what they'll essentially do is they'll file a paper with the state of Delaware that says that you're a registered business. But that's just the beginning of this whole thing. Then you're gonna need to solve your US mailing address, as I was talking about, which you can hire from one of these services that I mentioned. Third, you're gonna need to apply for an EIN number. That's an employer identification number. This is the company's tax ID number, essentially, which you'll need to file taxes, you'll need to hire people, and you'll need to sign up for a good amount of products, including your bank account. So next, you're gonna need to prepare a few essential documents for the company. And I'm gonna list them all right here, because there are plenty. Essentially, what these documents do is lay out the company's rules or the company's laws. For example, how much stock ownership does each founder get? Or how many votes does each share of stock get? Or when can shares of stock transfer hands and who needs to approve that? They also define voting rules for the board of directors, or what decisions can be made by the CEO, the board, or the consent of the rest of the shareholders in the company. They also define vesting periods, for example, which are critical to protecting the founders and the investors if a founder decides to leave the company. We made a whole video about vesting if you want to check that out. Now, we have some of these templates available for a few of these documents on our platform, so you can source them from there, but that's still not everything. Number 5 is you're gonna need to step into the bank. So having a company is pointless if you don't have an actual bank account. So this one is probably one of the most complicated steps because not all banks are gonna let you open a corporate account without actually stepping into a physical location of the bank. Our first bank was Bank of America, and we actually had to walk into the bank to do it. So like I said, there are 2 ways to navigate this whole process. The hard one is that you can go on Google and you can find a bunch of different services that take care of different parts of this process. And the easy one comes thanks to our friends at Firstbase, which is a YZ-backed company that is quite literally dedicated to helping foreign entrepreneurs succeed in the US. And the founder, Mark, created Firstbase.io with entrepreneurs like myself and Vinny and Jose and you guys in mind. And we missed each other by a few years. They would have saved us a lot of headaches and a few $1,000s if they had existed back when we started Slidebean, which was 8 years ago now. And these guys started by just helping you guys fill out your incorporation documents or getting an EIN or opening the bank account. But today, they're more of this operating system to help you scale and grow your company faster. And all of that mess of steps and documents and filing is just $3.99 when you use Firstbase. And if you use the coupon code in the description, you can get a 10% off, which leaves it at just $360. And trust me, there's really no better deal than that on the internet to establish a US company. More steps. You've incorporated, so you have stock certificates, you have your bank account, you have your EIN, and you're ready to go unicorn. Now, there's still a couple of extra steps to take into account here. For example, trademarks. Now, if you're looking to register a trademark, now meaning when you incorporate is probably the time to do it. We've had some horror stories with the whole trademark stuff. For example, one of our law firms charged us $2,000+ for filing a trademark that was not even likely to get registered. And they probably knew this before they even started the process. But it is essential that you understand what can be trademarked and what is really a long shot, and you want to put your effort into the right places. That's a topic for a whole other video, probably with a trademark lawyer sitting next to me, so let me know if that's something that you'd like us to cover in the future. Essentially, if your name is new, or if you have some unique spelling, or if it's a name that just doesn't exist, then you should give it a shot. We have a few deals on our platform, and the guys from Firstbase do as well, just to cut some costs on that. Last but not least, let's talk a little bit about costs, because you can't forget about the ongoing costs of running a US company, because they're gonna quickly add up. If you're bootstrapping and you incorporated before you actually needed to, these costs can really, really sting. For example, your state fees are $500 to $800 per year, and there's a minimum cost to any operating business. Delaware has a yearly tax, operating fee of $400, and you'll need to pay that every year regardless of your revenue or profit. Furthermore, you might need to pay taxes for every state where you did any business. That is, a state where you had a physical presence or where you had a payroll employee. This doesn't count for 1099 or contractors. So that's one thing to take into account depending on how you do your hiring across the US. For example, if you have a team that's separated in different states, you will need to file and pay state taxes for each state where your team operates. This can quickly add up. This can quickly increase your costs if you have a team all over the US. Again, there's an exception with contractors or 1099s where you don't have to pay this. Also, we have accounting and tax filing costs, which range from $1,000 to $5,000 per year. And this is where it starts getting a little scary because the fines for not filing your taxes correctly are really high, usually starting at $10K. Considering how empty your bank accounts are, probably were, at least for us in the early stages of Slidebean, a $10K fine would have killed or at least cut our runway really badly. So for this stuff, we use Dinero. This is a company that we've used for a few years now, and we're overall happy with the service. They do the bookkeeping every month, which is keeping track of invoices and whatnot, and they do the tax filing at the end of the year, as long as you keep your monthly subscription going. Now, if you want to save some cash, you can have someone on your team keep your books, or maybe hire a cheaper bookkeeping service. There are web services that range from $20 to $200 a month. You'll still need to find someone to file your actual taxes at the end of the year, which could cost around $750 to maybe $1,000 for the whole service. We also have startup insurance. That's around $1,500 per year and up. It's recommended that any corporation that exists has an insurance policy, and I wasn't familiar with this at the beginning, but it seems to be a critical element that some investors often look for as part of the due diligence process. The most basic insurance policies you'll need are a general liability and the errors and omissions, and maybe a cybersecurity plan in case you get hacked. We use a company called Founder Shield for that. So if you're a foreign founder, you also need to file some extra paperwork every year. So if you have any foreign founders on the team with over 25% ownership in the company, bingo. Form 5472 is for you, and if you miss it, $10K fine. Now, tax teams usually charge an additional $400 to $500 for filing this form for each founder, in our case 3, so yes, ouch. Also, if you have foreign subsidiaries, you need to file some extra forms. So if your company has any stake in a foreign business, for example, your subsidiary where you pay for the local costs, well, you need to file one Form 8865 for every subsidiary every year. So this is quite a long document. It's estimated to take around 50 hours of a tax expert to complete, which means that it's usually going to cost maybe $1,000 to $1,500 a month. And same as before, the fine for not filing it, $10,000. Also, and a lot of people don't think about this, but don't forget to plan for the worst case scenario. If your company fails, you have to make sure that you have enough money in your bank account to close your corporation and to file the last bit of taxes as soon as this happens. Otherwise, you'll be left with an extra year of expenses, headaches related to this unused C Corp. That's maybe $1,000, $2,000, maybe $5,000 that you want to keep safe just in case. If you don't have at least $2,000 in the bank account to pay for these tax filing fees, you could end up with fines that transcend the company and could haunt you personally. So don't underestimate that possibility. I don't want to end the video on a down note. Our journey as entrepreneurs is full of risk, and that's just the truth. Chances are our companies will fail. That's just a likability. But when we're bootstrapping, we have to make every dollar count. So my best suggestion is just be careful on when you decide to move forward, when you decide to stack up all these costs. But if you're foreign to this terminology, you want to use a service that removes the headache so you can focus 100% of your brain on building and selling rather than on logistics and paperwork. And we would not be here if we were not a US entity, that's for sure. And sometimes all you have to do is take a leap of faith. Good luck with that. Remember, the first 5 comments on any of our videos get free office hours with me, so I'm happy to talk about all this stuff in those office hours. Make sure to hit that subscribe then, and we'll see you next week.